Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we will be discussing on an important topic which is foreign exchange dealing room operations. So this foreign exchange dealing room operations comprise of functions of a service branch. For example, I am an exporter in India and I deal with foreign currencies by exporting my goods to America. So in India, I will have a bank for me, maybe Canara Bank, or that importer in America will have a bank on his behalf, maybe American Bank. So here, my Canara Bank will be a service branch for me as well as the importer. So this foreign exchange dealing room operations comprise of functions of a service branch to meet the requirements of the customers of other branches also. So the major function of this foreign exchange dealing room operation is to buy or sell foreign currencies, to manage foreign currencies, assets and liabilities, to fund and manage nostro accounts. Nostro account is nothing but my account in any foreign country is known as nostro account. To undertake proprietary trading in currencies, and it acts as a separate profit center for the bank or the institute. So therefore, this foreign exchange dealing room operations act as a helper for us if we are dealing with foreign exchange currencies in the trading market, and it acts as a profit center for the banks dealing with the foreign currencies. So who are the persons who are working in the dealing room? They are known as dealers. So these dealers are involved in buying or selling of currencies, and they act as a critical manpower because they have to understand the job of dealing with buying or selling foreign currencies. They have a risk-taking capacity. Only then they can deal with foreign exchange currencies. And these dealers should have a fast and speed decision-making capacity. And then they should create an atmosphere of complete trust in the foreign exchange dealing rooms. So all this will lead to profits for dealing room operations. But if dealers make any small mistake, it will wipe off all the profit in a second. So being dealers dealing in foreign exchange markets, it is our utmost importance to be careful when dealing with foreign currencies. So these dealers maintain two positions. So this is the first part of a dealing room, which is the funds position, where it deals with the inflow and outflow of funds. If there is any mismatch in inflow and outflow of fund, this will lead to interest rate risk. And the second position which a dealer has to maintain is the currency position. So this deals with the overbought or oversold position of currencies. So this position is mainly arrived after merchant or interbank transaction, and if there is any mismatch in currency position, it will lead to exchange risk. So the next part of a dealing room is back office. So what is the major function in a back office? The first one is it takes care of processing of deals, accounts, reconciliation, etc. So what is reconciliation? It is the money leaving. If it's equal to the money spent, then that is known as reconciliation, which is the balance between the money leaving and the money spent. And this back office also acts as a supportive tool and a checking role for the dealers. So these two are the functions of a back office. Now moving on to the third part of a dealing room operation is the mid office. The mid office deals with mainly on risks, that is, it manages risks. For parameterization of risk, it checks over the risks taken by the dealers. It also gives market information to the dealers, and this mid office acts as an independent function looking after compliance of various guidelines and instructions. So these 5 are the functions of a mid office. So the increasing volume of foreign exchange transactions, mainly due to expanding international trade, brings in the necessity for management control over profit or loss evaluation. We know that this foreign exchange transaction is an increasing trend because of the international trade happening worldwide, and therefore we need a management control to control the profit or loss situation happening due to these foreign exchange transactions. And there should be some specific guidelines or limits which has to be adhered by the traders. So for that, RBI has approved Uniform Standards Accounting Procedure, which is issued by FEDI. FEDI is nothing but Foreign Exchange Dealers Association of India. So this association requires the bank's role to undertake the profit or loss evaluation and report it every month. So we know that this increasing volume of foreign exchange transaction leads to the necessity for a management control over the profit or loss evaluation from the foreign exchange trade. So RBI has approved Uniform Standards Accounting Procedure, which is issued by FEDI, and this association utilizes banks to monitor the profit or loss evaluation and report the profit or loss situation every month. So now we are going to see about the management and control of dealing room in detail. So as I told you, RBI has approved this Uniform Standards Accounting Procedure for the management of dealing room operation, focusing on risk associated with foreign exchange dealing room operation. So the risks are mainly due to complex nature of foreign exchange markets, and also the risks in foreign exchange trade are due to volatile nature, that is changing nature of exchange rate movements. So these are the main factors why we see many risks in exchange trade. So now we are going to see the major risks with the foreign exchange dealing room, and this management has agreed to frame policies depending on the major risks. So the first risk is operational risk. We will just be seeing an overview of all the different major risks, whereas in the forthcoming chapter we will be discussing about the risks in detail. So what is an operational risk? As the name suggests, operation, which involves human and system. So obviously it is due to human errors, technical faults, infrastructure breakdown, because of the faulty systems and procedures, and because of the lack of internal control. So these come under operational risks. And the second risk is exchange risk. So exchange risks are most common and obvious in foreign exchange markets. This exchange risk is mainly due to fluctuation in exchange rate and also due to mismatch in assets or liabilities and the receivables or payables. The third type of risk is credit risk. So credit risk is nothing but the risk of loss due to the inability or the unwillingness of a party to meet the obligations, that is the contract obligations, at maturity of transaction. Which means that there are two parties who agree for a contract to exchange funds in foreign currencies. So if any one party is not able to meet the contract obligations, then that will lead to risk of loss, thereby contributing to credit risk. So there are two type of risk. There is subtype of risk in credit risk. One is pre-settlement risk, which is the risk before maturity of contract, whereas settlement risk is the risk which happens during the course of settlement due to the time zone factors. So settlement risk is when the counterparty is not able to meet the obligations before the maturity of contract, whereas settlement risk is when the party may not be able to meet the contract obligation during the course of settlement. This mainly are due to the time zone factors between the different countries. The fourth risk is liquidity risk. So liquidity risk is mainly when the liabilities drain faster than the assets in banks, and the mismatch between the liability and asset will lead to liquidity risk. The next kind of risk is gap risk or interest rate risk. So a bank buys and sells currencies. So it buys at spot rate and sells at forward rate. And if there is any mismatch between the buying and selling capability of the currencies, then that will lead to a gap. This gap has to be filled by banks by paying or receiving appropriate forward differentials. So this forward differential is a function of interest rate, which means that a change in interest rate will change the forward differentials. So a movement in interest rate will tend to a movement in or change in the forward differentials. So therefore the risk out of adverse movement of interest rate differential is known as interest rate risk. Moving on to the next risk, which is market risk. Market risk is nothing but an adverse movement of market variables when players are unable to exit positions quickly. For example, there is a contract signed between two parties, and when the party is unable to exit the particular position, and by the same time there is a movement of market variable, obviously that will lead to a risk. So that is known as market risk. The next risk is legal risk. Legal risk is nothing but the non-enforceability of contract against the counterparty. For example, one party has signed a contract with another counterparty, and the counterparty is not able to enforce the contract. So the party may take a legal action against the counterparty, and that will lead to legal risk. The next risk is systemic risk. So what is systemic risk? This means that when a major bank is failing, this will lead a loss to counterparty. Thereby, there will be a banking crisis. So this is known as systemic risk. Moving on to the next risk, which is country risk. Country risk is nothing but a counterparty in different country is unable to perform its part of contractual obligation despite of its willingness. This is mainly due to maybe any local government regulation or political or economic instability. So because of that, even when the party is willing to pay the funds, there might be some risk in the country which will lead to country risks. So already we saw about settlement risk and credit risk, where due to time zone factors, there is some settlement issue which will lead to credit risk. Here, the party is in a different country where, because of the local government regulation or political stability of the particular country where the party is residing, there is a country risk. Even he is willing to pay the funds, but because of this local government regulation happening on inside the country, he is not able to pay the funds at the appropriate date. This is known as country risk. The last risk is sovereign risk. Sovereign risk is a sub-risk of country risk, which is the sovereign risk is when a country defaults on its commercial debt obligations. This sovereign risk cannot be questioned in the court of law. So that is known as sovereign risk. So an accurate management control of the dealing room operations alone can cover the risks to bring the profit. So an effective management control of dealing room operations will help to mitigate all these risks, thereby providing profit from foreign exchange dealings. So there is a topic named as risk management, which we will be dealing further. So there we will learn about these risks in detail. So I have given an overview of all the risks today. So today we saw about what is a foreign exchange dealing room operations and what are its operations, who is a dealer, what are his functions, what is funds position, currency position, what is a back office, its functions, what is a mid office and what are its functions. And we saw about uniform standards accounting procedure issued by FEDI and approved by RBI. We saw about the management and control of a dealing room, which mainly concentrates on risks. Only then the dealing room management and control can be successful. And we saw about the 10 different types of risks: operational risk, exchange risk, credit risk, liquidity risk, gap or interest rate risk, market risk, legal risk, systemic risk, country risk, and sovereign risk. So that is all for today. Thank you.